What's going on, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Kegas back with you for another edition of Tropics Watch Live. Of course, we do this every Monday, typically at 11 o'clock in the morning throughout hurricane season, just to give you an update on what is going on. And we do have a little bit of stuff going on, so letting everybody join, post in the comments where you're tuning in from. If you want to stay updated as the season goes on, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. A little bit later on in the show, we'll give you another way you can stay updated this hurricane season. It's called the Tropics Watch newsletter, and that way I can visit your inbox if you want me to, and we can break down some of the things that are going out into the tropics. Also coming at you live on News 6 Plus and on clickorlando.com. We're going to come back to this satellite and radar picture in just one second. First, though, I do want to talk about the areas that we are watching. And of course, we've been talking about this area in the Bay of Campeche region, southwest Gulf of Mexico, for quite some time now. This has been that Central American gyre that we speak of, and it oftentimes births this time of the year a tropical system or two. And this is what we're going to be watching in the short term. You did see here the Hurricane Center went red today, giving it a 70% shot over the next couple of days for all of this mumbo-jumbo thunderstorm activity right around Central America to congeal and to consolidate into a tropical system. We also have this thing out here, which will likely be steered toward the United States. Right now, it doesn't look too terribly significant, thankfully, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. We're going to focus on the more imminent threat, if you will, with the Central American deal, and there's going to be a lot of heavy rain, especially in Central America. So this is moving away from Central America, but there's going to be a ton of rain coming to the eastern side of Mexico, to the western side of Mexico. Again, this is how the Central American gyre works. Let me hit this into play mode. That's going to be the model forecast that we're going to break down in just one second. But I do want to get the telestration up so that I can show you again right around the Cancun area. Just notice that counterclockwise spin there. I'm going to look at some of the comments as well. So keep those coming. If you have any questions, post those in the comments, whether you're watching on the Just Weather page or on the clickorlando.com page. We have you covered. All right, so first and foremost, we have area number one hanging out right around the Cancun area. This is what it could launch itself over the next couple of days, closer to Mexico, closer to the southern Texas area. Area number two is this dying cold front that has moved its way east of Bermuda, and we now have this little entity. That little spin, if you see where my mouse is, my telestrator isn't turning on this graphic, but it's right here, and that is likely going to be guided back towards Florida or the southeast corner of the United States. Now, a couple of things that we're watching here, but it looks like that easterly motion into the United States is going to be evident because of the big-time heat in the Northeast. So we're going to break all that part down coming up a little bit later on in the show as well. First, I want to show you a couple of different models. This is going to be the European model, the high-resolution European model, and you see the yellows and reds on here. That indicates the very, very heavy rain. There we go. My telestration is working again. Note the arrows. If you look closely right onto the Bay of Campeche area, you see that counterclockwise motion. So this is, again, as we are looking right now, I think the model forecast has it a little bit better organized than what it actually is out there. But I want to show you, take you into the future and show you how this all comes together. So now we're looking at Wednesday, and we still have an area of spin, but you'll notice that it is elongated. So it's going to be interesting to see if we do have at least a tropical depression still as of Wednesday. It all depends upon if it's going to be the circulation is tight enough and if the center is producing thunderstorms. Right here, that probably isn't a tropical system at that time. It's all going to be determining if it can tighten up that center by the time we get to Wednesday. If not, there's going to be more opportunities as it closes in on land. This is going to be 9 o'clock on Wednesday night. This is 2 days from now. And you actually notice how much tighter that circulation is. So there's where our area of low pressure, we're looking at those different colored arrows. The red means warmer air, the blue means colder air. In this sense, it's really just going to be that counterclockwise motion that we're looking at. But the one thing, no matter how strong this gives, and it likely is not going to get too terribly strong, we know that elevation and heavy rain are a no-go, and unfortunately we do have a ton of tropical moisture, maybe even surging as far north as Houston, certainly through Corpus Christi and into Brownsville, and then all through eastern Mexico. A ton of heavy rain. So let me take this out even further towards the end of the week. And finally, there's Thursday. We're still dealing with the very heavy rain. So this is going to be an extended rainfall event. And I think the highest impacts from this system is going to be the extremely heavy rainfall and the potential for some mudslides and flash flooding, especially in this part of Mexico. Also in Central America, I'll show you that as well coming up in just 1 second. There's still an opportunity for that to lift a little bit further to the north, especially if it takes its time, and I'm going to show you that with some of the steering coming up in just a couple of minutes. I do want to show you guys some of the model estimated rainfall totals here over the next few days. While I let that play out, I'm going to check up on some of the comments here. Let's see. Shari says, keeping an eye on the tropics, live in the Gulf Coast in Louisiana. She says that she has a strong feeling that she's going to get hit. I hope not. Okay, we have a hurricane question on the Outer Banks. So here's what I'm going to say about the Outer Banks. I don't think you're going to have a hurricane coming to the Outer Banks, but the weather might be a little crummy. Cloudy, rainy. I'm going to show you that part of the story coming up in just 1 second. That part of the model forecaster for the Atlantic side in just 1 second. So again, the highest rainfall totals here, there's not many towns to get a good model gauge on in terms of the number, but you see it right there. Brownsville, 4 inches, about 5 inches in Port Lavaca. This is going to be through Saturday. So anywhere up in here in the mountains of Mexico, I mean, we're talking about double-digit rainfall totals, several inches of rain closer to Veracruz. And I do want to zoom out because I have some of the stuff for the Eastern Pacific as well. We talked about the Central American gyre. If you've been watching some of the videos, and if you haven't been and want to stay updated on the tropics, you've come to the right place. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. If you do want to hang out with us and talk tropics and talk about the weather in general, that's what we do here on this channel. Really appreciate the support and everything and the conversations that we've been having since the channel got underway about a year ago this time. Semi-permanent area of low pressure, that's the Central American gyre. We have that counterclockwise flow. So we still have, regardless if anything develops in the Eastern Pacific, we have a ton of moisture. Look at that number in San Salvador. We're talking about double-digit rainfall totals. I mean, maybe even getting closer to 2 feet. So we're really going to be concerned through Saturday with some flash flooding in San Salvador and on the western side of Mexico and on the western side of Central America as we work our way through the upcoming weekend is something completely separate from that tropical entity that we're just breaking down right now. So I want to get you to the Atlantic side here. And this is going to be, again, this is current time. This is where we stand right now. This is all brought on by a cold front. So everything, honestly, is working just how it should for the month of June. We get predominantly these storms to develop in right off the Central American gyre in the Gulf of Mexico. And then also from dying cold fronts on the Atlantic side off the eastern seaboard. And I'm going to show you the steering currents in just 1 second, but this is the GFS rendition, by the way, of the solution, and you do see this little swirl here. So that's, at least from the model perspective, that's at least a tropical depression at this point. Of course, here's the Outer Banks, here's the southeast corner of the U.S., and then there is our storm. So let me take this further out into motion here. So this is what I was talking about. Someone asked about the Outer Banks. Most of the model guidance, and we can go through a bunch of extra model renditions if you would like. Most of them keep it weak. The strongest that has been showing over the weekend is a tropical storm somewhere in between Florida and the Carolinas. So I know that's a giant range right now. I'll show you some of the uncertainty as to that. But really from about this is going to be the area that we're going to be watching closely for a potential landfall if it does become tropical. And again, that still remains to be seen if it is going to tighten up and actually become a tropical system or not. But nonetheless, it's something that we're going to be watching there. I do want to show you what is actually steering this. So what is going to be stealing the headlines over the last several days, and we made a video on this a couple of days ago. If you guys saw that, give that a thumbs up. Give this video a thumbs up. But I'll have to push this live stream out to more people so that we can have this weather conversation, because that's what I like to have. I like to talk about the weather too, not just kind of throw all this stuff out you. Okay, so Bishop83 HD, he's asking a great question, and we're going to get into all that right now. He's asking about, is this high-pressure setup going to be indicative of where it is for the entire season, or is it a random setup and maybe different come August? So great question, and while we go over some other things, I'll try to load up some of the more long-range models here to show that list. One of the things that we always watch for, one of the no-goes that we do not like for Atlantic development making over, is this trough out west. Now, that does help to build the ridge that we have in the east. So what we're looking at here, the cooler colors, if you will, the yellows, the greens, those are the lower heights. So the cooler temperatures, this is the 500 millibar chart, so about 15 to 20,000 feet above your head. And then where we have the darker red, that's going to be the higher heights, so the higher pressure here. So what we have going on in the Northeast, and if you're watching from the Northeast or have friends or family there, we have this giant ridge of high pressure building over the east. Now, this setup is called Ridge. The song is called Bridge Over Troubled Waters. This setup is called Ridge Over Troubled Waters, because when we have a ridge of high pressure anchored over the Northeast, watch what happens. Here's our little storm down here. It is guiding it right on into land. Okay, so we don't like having the ridge right there because it blocks an escape route back out to sea, and it directs it right on into the United States, whether that be through the Florida Straits, through the Caribbean, depending upon where the storm is, or if it's hanging out by the Turks and Caicos or Bahamas, right onto the East Coast. So this is where we get the East Coast strikes when the Bermuda High, or when this big chunk of high pressure builds over the Northeast or over the extreme Western Atlantic. So the question was, is this going to be here? Some of the long-range guidance does suggest that we are going to keep that area of high pressure here. If you also watched a previous video that we did, we mentioned that potentially some of the hot spots this year, according to some of the analog years, were the Carolinas and the East Coast and the southeast corner of the United States. Well, here we go. Right off the bat to start hurricane season, we're already talking about a storm coming through the east and then working its way somewhere across the southeast corner or mid-Atlantic coast. Again, right now this does not look to be strong, so it doesn't matter in terms of, okay, is it going to verify in terms of strength or whatever. We're only in June. It's still kind of sloppy with all likelihood, but nonetheless, the water temperature is warm. So the two things that we're going to watch going forward, does this trough remain anchored here? We certainly don't like to see it there right now. And do we build this ridge here? As I show you some other things, I'll try to pull up some of that to go steering. Just pulling up some of the comments here on the stream, and I'm going to get you back to the actual weather computer. So this is the model that I was showing you. So that's at the surface. I was showing you 500 millibars. Let me get back to my weather computer. Somebody asked about the Hurricane Hunter plan of day, so I'm going to try to pull that up as well. So bear with me, trying to walk and chew gum at the same time. Okay, so while I'm working on that, and feel free to, again, post comments, talk amongst yourselves, this is where we kind of stand. Again, unfortunately, just getting underway. We really don't see the uptick until August. The other thing that I wanted to show you is the water temperature. Of course, that means everything. We can take its temperature if my telestration is going to work, and we can check to see what they are. The system itself is kind of right there. 80 degrees is basically your benchmark. Now, I will say, if this does kind of come east a little bit, what do we have here? We have the Gulf Stream. It's that area of extremely warm water that's warmer than its surroundings. I mean, we're talking low to mid 80s. So by and large, because the water temperatures are so much above where they should be this time of the year, the models could be underplaying the intensity here a little bit if something were to come in on the east. We also, one of the things that we look at for tropical development as well is the ridge of high pressure above it. So as I say that all the models right now have something pretty weak on the East Coast. If we do have that 500 millibar high pressure that's baking the Northeast over the next week with the heat, that will also help that storm ventilate and breathe upstairs. So that's the one thing that it needs. It needs to breathe upstairs. High pressure does that, and typically on top of strong hurricanes, you do get high pressure to develop themselves. You have the low pressure at the surface, you have high pressure on top. When there's an upper high like that, synoptically and on the large scale, it helps it to breathe and to vent. So while there may not be a ton of time for it to get its act together, we could be watching something kind of strengthen as it goes into shore. So that's something to watch too. And then down here, I forgot to mention the curvature of Texas and the curvature of Mexico. It helps naturally something tighten up. So that's why I think as well that even though we have a bunch of unorganized thunderstorms at this time, I'm just bringing up the Hurricane Hunter plan of the day here. And then I'll bring you back to the thing. Okay, so one of the questions was, can we break this down? So if necessary, the Hurricane Center sends out the plan of day for the hurricane hunters. Okay, so and he was asking about what does all of this mean and whatever. So this is going to be. So the hurricane hunters should be out there right now. So the C is the takeoff time. A is when they're expecting that fix to happen. Flight 1, Teal 71. So this is going to be the United States Air Force that's out there. So this is going to be the C-130. So it is going to go to the invest that is out there. It's an low-level invest. Its plan is to go from the surface to 10,000 feet. And then the second one is a fix. But yeah, so this is the flight time. 18Z is 2 p.m. Eastern. So it's expected to be at the center later today on the 17th. 18Z is 2 p.m. Eastern. So that flight took off. Should have taken off already unless there were any kind of delays. I've not checked. I can see if I can pull up real-time stuff. Tropical Tidbits is a great spot for recon tracking. Okay, so no mission has gone off just yet. Actually, it should be momentarily. 4 minutes ago was the schedule. So we should be having a recon mission take off. And it looks like later on tonight there should be 2 passes on that second one. So both of those are going to the disturbance in the Gulf. I think the other one's a little too far away still to send out the planes. All right, so let me look at some of the comments. Hey, Dennis, on the Click Orlando page, yes, so we do realize how dry Clay County has been. For sure. It's been a crazy mix. Of course, we had the couple of feet of rain in South Florida with that tropical moisture surging up. And then we had a bunch of stuff. A Florida man says the same thing on the clickorlando.com page. Same thing with Sumter and Marion County, such little rain. The retention ponds are completely dry. No, it's wild how dry it is in northwestern Florida, especially right along the Big Bend area. We could use some rain. All right, one of the things that I wanted to show you here before we kind of wrap some stuff up and keep the questions coming, and again, if I don't get to your question today, post that in the comments. If you want to stay updated and get these live streams and things like that, hit that subscribe button for me. I'd appreciate it. It's always good to talk to you guys. So I appreciate you guys tuning in on both the Just Weather channel and the Click Orlando channel. Okay, let's see here. Just looking at some of the questions on... Hey, Marva in Central Illinois, Maryland, and Brownsville, Texas. Looks like you guys have some rain coming your way. S.E. Dealey, what's going on, buddy? Liam, glad I could help. All right, so the point I was making with this is that, and we talked about this a lot in last evening's episode of Tropics Watch Live, was that the kind of narrative was that we're off to a slow start this hurricane season. And I guess you could say that with you compare it to other seasons, but it means nothing when it comes to how busy the rest of the season is going to be, because really most of the storms don't come our way until later on, until really after August. So on average, we typically don't see the first named storm until June 20th. Well, we're going to be right around there because I think one of these two systems are going to get a name. I think in all likelihood, it's going to be that Bay of Campeche one, Southwest Gulf. And then we typically don't see the first hurricane until August 11th. Hard to believe, but that is climatology right there. And then the first major hurricane on average doesn't arrive until September 1st. Again, that's all on average. Right now, I would imagine we would see our first major hurricane before August 11th because we have August-like energy in the water in parts of the Caribbean, especially in the middle of June. So we have more juice for those storms to get a little stronger as well. We'll see when we get the uptick going. I will say, I'll try to bring up some of the other stuff to kind of show you. I always like to do long range stuff a lot in the video. So if you are interested in some of the long range weather patterns, especially when it comes to the tropics, hit that subscribe button. All right, I want to show you one last thing before we go. If I can pull it up here. All right. So this is going to be what we call I like to call it the rising motion anomaly. So everywhere you see green on this map, that's where air is rising. To get thunderstorms, you need to have that air rising. So the darker the green on this map, the more the air is rising. So you see we have a lot of green over Central America. We talked about this actually 3 weeks ago, that during the third week of June, we would likely get our first storm of the season. Well, here we are in the third week of June, and here we are ready to potentially get our first named storm of the season. We forecast that by looking at this, something known as the Madden-Julian oscillation. It goes around the globe every 30 to 60 days, and when it goes through the favorable side for the Atlantic, it helps to enhance rising motion to get more thunderstorms. Well, here we go in real time. This is through the June 24th. There you go with the green. I will say here, this is some of the latest stuff coming in. That pulse moves through. This is going to be through the end of June. This is ending July 1st. We could have something else, and there actually has been some model support for another storm coming through the Caribbean and going up and out as we end June. So something to watch there as well. That's that pulse. And then we might take a couple of week break going into the third week of July. So that's through July 15th. Now all that brown there, we could have a bunch of tropical stuff in the Western Pacific closer to Japan, maybe the Philippines. And then we have, I think, really 2 to 3 good weeks of sinking air. It doesn't mean we're not going to get anything to develop at that time, but That's a climatologically speaking quiet time for the Atlantic, and then we have an extra enhancement of sinking air to really prohibit. So if anybody has any vacations, and again, or living in the Caribbean, I'm not saying that development is impossible, but it's working in your favor for the first 2 weeks of July to have pretty quiet weather in the Caribbean, in the Gulf, Bahamas, Florida, and all that jazz in that part of the world through July 15th. Once we get into July, so really from July 2nd or 3rd, 4th of July through the middle of July, I think we'll have a nice quiet stretch in the tropics, relatively speaking. And if something were to try to get going, we would see that have a lot of trouble. That's the other thing. Speaking of trouble, you guys know I bounce around all the time, so forgive me. But I want to show you this, too, for our friends in the Caribbean and especially the Lesser Antilles. That's the weather computer. We have another round of Saharan dust coming through into Trinidad and Tobago, parts of the Windward Islands, Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica. We have some of that Saharan dust working its way back in, and we should see that work. There's that the brown represents the dust here, and it should get through the central Caribbean. So Puerto Rico, I know it's been on the hotter side. We're going to have some dust coming through, and we might have some lower concentrations pinwheeling behind that system into Cancun, into South and Central Florida, and then into parts of Western Cuba. So we do have a little bit of dust out there. It's nothing super prolific. So again, also not the best of news either, that we'd like to have that dust out there nice and prolific when it comes to the hurricane season as well. Oh, hey, Denise, good to see you on the stream. Alrighty, guys. So with that said, we've kind of talked for about 30 minutes now. Any more questions, post that in the comments below. Again, really watching those two areas. Let me get back to my map if anybody just joined late, so that I can show you what areas those are. And again, that's right off the Florida coast, and that would be right off of right through the Bay of Campeche, and then potentially impacting areas right in the western Gulf, in eastern Texas, really southeastern Texas. There's also going to be a lot of moisture coming with that, no matter if it develops or not, into the North Gulf Coast. So last week it was all South Florida. Now it's going to be directed over on the western side. There's also, off a dying cold front, we have something right here, not developed yet, but it has the potential to develop as it works its way up in this area, maybe as far north as the Outer Banks, although it's going to be hard for it to come north because of this big behemoth ridge of high pressure that's hanging right here that's going to help to keep it closely tied to the eastern seaboard. So land is going to be impacted somewhere from central Florida to the Outer Banks. The strength is still yet to be determined. Nothing has it getting too strong, but it could get a little bit of oomph as helped by that area of high pressure to its north and the Gulf Stream. So that is something to be mindful of as well. And if you want to stay updated on all of this, again, hit me up in the comment section. My Facebook, Jonathan Kegas News 6, Twitter at Jonathan Kegas, and then also subscribing to the Just Weather channel or the ClickOrlando.com YouTube channel, whichever one of those you're watching on. If you're watching on ClickOrlando.com, of course, welcome as well. Appreciate you guys and watching on News 6 Plus. That's where we are all live. So we have a lot of areas and a lot of spots to get this. And, of course, on the Pinpoint Weather app, the Pinpoint Hurricane app is a great tool as well. It is a free download. So if you search Pinpoint Weather or WKMG in your app store, that is a free download to the Hurricane app. I'm biased because it's our app, but whether you're in Central Florida or way outside of Central Florida, in the Lesser Antilles, in Trinidad and Tobago, in Central America, and in Texas, Louisiana, anywhere that gets impacted by tropical systems, this app is for you. Anytime the Hurricane Center pushes their little magic button, I like to think that they have, you're going to know when something is named. It is a really great resource, especially if you're a nerd too and like to keep updated on all things tropics, whether there's something out there or not. We produce the graphics for that. Hurricane Center pushes out the information on that, and then you can get these live updates as well from us. I also mentioned earlier in the show that I'd give you another way to stay up on the hurricane season. You're going to get this in your inbox today if you sign up. This is going to be our Tropics Watch newsletter. I send you a newsletter every Monday. You can scan the QR code on your screen if you're watching this on a big screen, or you can go to clickorlando.com/newsletters. We are based out of Orlando and the greater Central Florida area, so that's why it's a clickorlando.com/newsletters site. There's a lot of newsletters on there. Just find the Tropics Watch one. Put your email in. It is free to sign up. And again, you're going to get one a little bit later on today that has the latest on those two systems and kind of an in-depth look on the tropics as a whole every Monday and as needed. So if we get a name later on this week, I'll visit your inbox maybe twice. Alrighty, guys. Can't thank you enough for tuning in and watching this. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And if you're not watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button anyway. And we'll catch you guys next time. Denise, thank you so much. Good to see you on the live chat. Really appreciate you tuning in. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks so much for being here. Again, we'll catch you next Monday. Sign up for the newsletter. It's right there. clickorlando.com/newsletters. You'll hear from me later today. And if this thing gets a name and through the week on YouTube. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Have a good one.